war. You give everything you have. That makes you an Avenger.
How about that? It's a stress-free environment. No surprises.
Do this.
As a team.
Guys, I'm bringing the party to you.
What made the Avengers 2012 change superhero movies forever, hidden facts, epic moments, and an honest review, all in one video. Welcome to Silver Screen Hub. Marvel's The Avengers, called Marvel Avengers Assemble in the United Kingdom and Ireland, and often just called The Avengers, is a 2012 American superhero movie based on the famous Marvel Comics team, The Avengers. The movie was made by Marvel Studios and released by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. It is the sixth movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU. The film was written and directed by Joss Whedon and features a star-studded cast, including Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, and Jeremy Renner as the Avengers. The movie also stars Tom Hiddleston, Stellan Skarsgård, and Samuel L. Jackson. In the story is Nick Fury and the secret spy organization SHIELD bring together Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Bruce Banner, Thor, Natasha Romanoff, and Clint Barton to create a powerful team that can stop Loki, Thor's brother, from taking over Earth and putting humanity under his control. The idea for the movie started when Marvel Studios received financial support from Merrill Lynch in April 2005. After the huge success of Iron Man in 2008, Marvel officially announced that the Avengers would hit theaters in July 2011 and would bring together the heroes introduced in earlier Marvel movies, including Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Thor, and Bruce Banner, who was originally played by Edward Norton in The Incredible Hulk. As the cast came together, Scarlett Johansson joined the movie as Natasha Romanoff in March 2009, Jeremy Renner was cast as Clint Barton in June 2010, and Mark Ruffalo replaced Edward Norton as Bruce Banner in July 2010. Because of these changes and the time needed to finish the project, the release date was moved to 2012. Joss Whedon was hired to direct the movie in April 2010, and he also rewrote the original screenplay that had been written by Zach Penn. Filming officially started in April 2011 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, before the production moved to Cleveland, Ohio in August and later to New York City in September. The movie also featured over 2,200 visual effects shots, making it one of the biggest visual effects projects at the time. The Avengers had its world premiere at the El Capitan Theater in Los Angeles on April 11, 2012, before being released across the United States on May 4, 2012, as the final movie in Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The film received a lot of positive reviews from both critics and fans, who praised Joss Whedon's direction, the well-written story, impressive visual effects, exciting action scenes, strong performances from the cast, and the movie's musical score. It became a massive success at the worldwide box office, earning more than $1.5 billion and breaking several box office records. At the time of its release, it became the third highest grossing movie of all time and the highest grossing movie released in 2012. It was also the first Marvel movie to earn over $1 billion in ticket sales around the world. In 2017, The Avengers was included in Empire magazine's list of the 100 greatest movies of all time. The film was nominated for Best Visual Effects at the 85th Academy Awards and received many other awards and honors. Its success led to three follow-up movies: Avengers, Age of Ultron 2015, Avengers Endgame 2019, which continued the story of Earth's mightiest heroes. Loki, Tom Hiddleston, the adopted prince of Asgard, meets the other, the leader of an alien race called the Chitauri. The other offers Loki a powerful army that he can use to conquer Earth. In return, Loki must recover the Tesseract, a mysterious cube filled with incredible energy. The Tesseract is the same powerful object seen in Captain America, the first Avenger. It ended up at the bottom of the ocean after Captain America stopped the Red Skull and Hydra by crashing the enemy aircraft into the Arctic. Howard Stark, Tony Stark's father, discovered the Tesseract while searching for Captain America after the crash. Over the years, scientists learned that the Tesseract was an almost unlimited source of clean energy with incredible potential. Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson, the director of the secret organization SHIELD, arrives at a remote research facility with Agent Maria Hill during an emergency evacuation. Inside the facility, Dr. Eric Selvig is leading a team of scientists who are studying the Tesseract. Agent Phil Coulson tells Fury that the cube has suddenly started giving off strange energy. Without warning, the Tesseract activates on its own and opens a portal, allowing Loki to arrive on Earth. Loki steals the Tesseract and uses his magical scepter to take control of Dr. Selvig and several SHIELD agents, including Clint Barton. The scepter puts them under Loki's mind control, forcing them to obey every command. Before escaping, Loki tells Fury that his goal is to conquer Earth and make humanity bow to him. Fury orders the research facility to self-destruct so Loki cannot use anything left behind. However, Barton and Selvig escape with Loki after giving him important information about the facility and the Tesseract. The entire base is destroyed. Realizing how serious the threat is, Fury restarts the Avengers initiative. Natasha Romanoff, also known as Black Widow, is sent to Calcutta to recruit Dr. Bruce Banner because his knowledge of gamma radiation can help track the Tesseract. At the same time, Phil Coulson visits Tony Stark to review Selvig's research, while Fury asks Steve Rogers, also known as Captain America, to help recover the Tesseract. It is also explained that Bruce Banner became the Hulk while trying to recreate a Dr. Abraham Erskine's super soldier serum that originally turned Steve Rogers into Captain America. The experiment failed, exposing Banner to massive amounts of gamma radiation and creating the Hulk instead. Loki explains that he wants to rule Earth because he believes he was cheated out of the throne of Asgard. He thinks he should have become king instead of his brother Thor. Meanwhile, the other has his own plans. He wants to use the Tesseract to gain access to other worlds and expand his control across the universe. Their agreement is simple. The other will help Loki conquer Earth, and in return, Loki will hand over the Tesseract once the mission is complete. While Barton steals a rare metal called iridium to stabilize the Tesseract's energy, Loki creates chaos in Stuttgart, Germany, forcing Captain America, Iron Man, and Black Widow to confront him. After a short battle, Loki surprisingly surrenders without much resistance. As SHIELD transports Loki aboard their flying aircraft carrier, the Helicarrier, Thor suddenly appears and frees his brother. Thor tries to convince Loki to give up his plan and return home to Asgard. He reminds Loki that Earth is now under his protection. However, Thor also needs the Tesseract to reopen the path back to Asgard, but Loki has secretly hidden it. After fighting briefly with Iron Man and Captain America, Thor agrees to take Loki back to the Helicarrier. Loki is locked inside a special prison cell while Bruce Banner and Tony Stark work together to track the missing Tesseract. During their investigation, Stark realizes that Barton stole the iridium because Loki needs it to stabilize the portal created by the Tesseract. Without the iridium, the portal would collapse before the Chitauri army could pass through. Stark also figures out Loki's next move. Loki plans to use the powerful arc reactor inside Stark Tower in New York City as the massive energy source needed to keep the portal open long enough for the invasion to begin. As the team spends more time together, disagreements start to grow. They argue about the best way to deal with Loki, and tensions become even worse when they discover that SHIELD has secretly been using the Tesseract to develop advanced weapons that could be used against future alien threats. While everyone is distracted by the arguments, Barton and the other agents under Loki's control launch a surprise attack on the helicarrier. They disable one of its engines, causing serious damage while the ship is still flying. During the battle, Bruce Banner loses control and transforms into the Hulk. Iron Man and Captain America rush to repair the damaged engines, while Thor struggles to stop the Hulk's destructive rampage before the helicarrier crashes. At the same time, Black Widow fights Clint Barton in an intense battle. She eventually knocks him unconscious, breaking Loki's mind control and returning Barton to normal. It soon becomes clear that everything happened exactly the way Loki wanted. He intentionally allowed himself to be captured so he could distract the Avengers, turn them against each other, and create enough chaos to escape. During the confusion, Loki kills Agent Phil Coulson, traps Thor inside the prison cell, and throws him out of the helicarrier. After attacking a SHIELD fighter jet, the Hulk eventually falls back to Earth. Fury uses Coulson's death to remind the Avengers what they are fighting for and convinces them to finally work together as one team. Tony Stark and Steve Rogers also realize that simply defeating Loki isn't enough. Loki wants the entire world to see him win because he believes public victory will prove that he deserves to rule Earth. Using the Tesseract and a special device built by Selvig, Loki opens a massive portal above Stark Tower, allowing the Chitauri invasion fleet to enter Earth. The Avengers quickly gather in New York City to defend the area around the portal. They fight together for the first time as a true team, but they soon realize that wave after wave of Chitauri soldiers are pouring into the city. Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor focus on protecting civilians, while Hawkeye provides support from rooftops with his incredible archery skills. Bruce Banner transforms back into the Hulk and confronts Loki directly. The Hulk easily overpowers him, smashing him into the ground several times and leaving Loki completely defeated. Meanwhile, Black Widow reaches the portal where Dr. Selvig, now free from Loki's control, reveals that Loki's scepter is the key to shutting the portal down. At the same time, Fury's superiors decide that New York cannot be saved and launch a nuclear missile toward Manhattan in a desperate attempt to stop the invasion. Iron Man intercepts the missile before it reaches the city and flies it through the portal into space toward the Chitauri fleet. The missile explodes inside the alien fleet, destroying the Chitauri command ship. Since all of the invading soldiers are connected to that ship, the entire alien army on Earth immediately shuts down and collapses. Iron Man's suit loses power after the explosion, causing Tony Stark to fall back through the portal toward Earth. The Hulk catches him just before he hits the ground, saving his life. Black Widow then uses Loki's scepter to close the portal up, preventing any more Chitauri forces from entering Earth. After the battle is over, Thor takes Loki and the Tesseract back to Asgard to face justice. Nick Fury tells his team that although they are going their separate ways for now, the Avengers will always return whenever the world needs them. In the first post-credit scene, the other reports the failed invasion to his mysterious master, who smiles after hearing about humanity's strength and determination. In the second post-credit scene, the exhausted Avengers quietly sit together in a small shawarma restaurant, enjoying a well-earned meal after saving the world. Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Tony Stark, Ron Man in The Avengers 2012 stands as one of the most pivotal casting decisions in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, effectively anchoring the ensemble with his established charisma and proven track record from the Iron Man films. Downey had already redefined the character in 2008's Iron Man and its 2010 sequel, bringing a blend of wit, vulnerability, and arrogance that made Stark a fan favorite. His involvement in the Avengers was secured early through a multi-picture deal with Marvel Studios, reflecting the studio's confidence in him as the linchpin for the team-up movie. Downey's casting was not without its challenges. Coming off personal struggles and a career resurgence, he infused Stark with layers of complexity that went beyond the playboy billionaire archetype. In the film, Stark's evolution is evident as he transitions from a solo operator to a team player, often clashing with Captain America over leadership and ideology. Director Joss Whedon noted that Downey pushed for Stark to drive early sequences, though the final script balanced the ensemble more evenly. Downey earned a reported $50 million, including bonuses, underscoring his star power. His performance shines in the film's banter heavy scenes where Stark's sarcasm cuts through tension. Interactions with Bruce Banner highlight intellectual rapport, while confrontations with Steve Rogers emphasize generational and philosophical divides. Downey's physical commitment, including suit work and motion capture elements for certain sequences, added authenticity. Critics praised how he made Stark feel lived in, carrying the weight of previous MCU entries while allowing room for others to shine. This role solidified Downey as the face of the franchise, influencing subsequent casting strategies that prioritized actors who could sustain long term arcs beyond the main heroics. Downey Stark interacts dynamically with supporting characters like Pepper Potts, Gwyneth Paltrow reprising her role, and Jarvis, voiced by Paul Bettany. These moments ground the high stakes action in personal stakes, showing Stark's growth amid the Chitauri invasion. His decision making during the climactic Battle of New York, flying the nuclear missile through the portal, exemplifies the character's sacrificial heroism, a trait honed across films but crystallized here under Whedon's direction. Downey's preparation involved deep collaboration with Whedon, who rewrote the script to leverage the actor's improvisational strengths. This approach allowed for organic humor, such as Stark's quips during the helicarrier arguments, which became iconic. The casting choice validated Marvel's risk on Downey years earlier, proving that star-driven ensemble films could succeed when anchored by proven talent. His chemistry with the cast elevated the entire project, making the Avengers feel like a natural convergence rather than a forced crossover. Chris Evans as Steve Rogers Captain America. Chris Evans' selection as Steve Rogers Captain America was another cornerstone of the Avengers casting, building directly on his standalone film Captain America: The First Avenger, 2011. Evans signed a multi-film deal that committed him to the ensemble, bringing a sense of earnest patriotism and moral clarity that contrasted sharply with Downey Stark. His casting emphasized physical transformation. Evans bulked up significantly for the role, and emotional depth, portraying a man out of time grappling with modern cynicism. In the film, Rogers' leadership emerges gradually. Recruited by Phil Coulson, he represents old-school heroism amid SHIELD's moral ambiguities. Evans conveyed the character's isolation and resolve, particularly in scenes where he questions authority or bonds with teammates. His dynamic with Stark is electric, highlighting friction between tradition and innovation. Whedon crafted these interactions to explore themes of unity, with Evans delivering understated yet powerful performances that anchored quieter moments. Evans' preparation included extensive training for fight choreography, ensuring Captain America's combat style felt distinct, shield-based, tactical, and super soldier precise. His salary was reportedly in the $2-3 million range, reflecting his rising status post Captain America. The actor discussed the role's challenges, noting Rogers' loneliness after waking in a new era, a theme explored through subtle expressions and dialogue. Supporting cast interactions amplified Evans' impact. His rapport with Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow evolves from suspicion to trust, while team-ups with Thor showcase physical prowess. Evans' performance in the Battle of New York, coordinating the Avengers, solidified Captain America as the team's moral center. This casting choice paid dividends in long-term MCU storytelling, where Evans' portrayal defined the character for over a decade. Whedon's direction allowed Evans to infuse humanity into the super soldier, avoiding one-dimensional patriotism. Scenes like the helicarrier brawl with Stark reveal vulnerability beneath the uniform, making Rogers relatable. Evans' commitment to the physical demands, including stunts, complemented the VFX-heavy production, ensuring seamless integration of practical and digital elements. Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner. The Hulk Mark Ruffalo's casting as Bruce Banner. Hulk marked a significant shift for the character in the MCU. After Edward Norton's departure from The Incredible Hulk 2008, Ruffalo was chosen for his ability to embody intellectual depth and emotional turmoil. Negotiations emphasized ensemble compatibility, with Marvel seeking an actor who thrived in collaborative settings. Ruffalo's first choice status by Whedon highlighted the director's vision for a nuanced Hulk. Ruffalo portrayed both Banner and provided motion capture performance for the Hulk, a first in the franchise. This dual role allowed for continuity in facial expressions and voice, with the Hulk's iconic Puni God line delivered by Ruffalo himself. His Banner is a man haunted by control issues, hiding in Kolkata until recruited by Black Widow. The performance balances intellect with quiet intensity, making the eventual transformation more impactful. The Hulk's rampage on the helicarrier showcases Ruffalo's physicality via performance capture, blending rage with reluctant heroism. His chemistry with Downey Stark, two brilliant minds with different burdens, adds levity and depth. Ruffalo earned $2 to $3 million, and his approach drew from Bill Bixby's TV series for emotional realism. Whedon praised Ruffalo's humanity, noting it humanized the monster. Interactions with the team, from initial wariness to pivotal battlefield contributions, underscore Banner's arc. The casting resolved prior Hulk inconsistencies, establishing Ruffalo as the definitive MCU version and influencing future portrayals. Ruffalo's preparation involved studying gamma radiation concepts and embracing the technical demands of motion capture. This dedication ensured the Hulk felt integrated rather than bolted on, enhancing the film spectacle. His subtle acting in Banner scenes contrasts powerfully with the creature's ferocity, creating one of the film's most memorable character dynamics. Chris Hemsworth reprised his role as Thor from the 2011 solo film, bringing Asgardian grandeur and humor to the Avengers. Cast as part of a multi-picture deal, Hemsworth's selection capitalized on his imposing physique and comedic timing, honed in Australian television and earlier Hollywood outings. He maintained his muscular build through a rigorous high-protein diet, embodying the god of thunder's physicality. Thor's arc revolves around confronting his brother Loki, adding personal stakes to the global threat. Hemsworth's performance mixes regal authority with fish-out-of-water awkwardness on Earth, particularly in clashes with Iron Man and Captain America. His arrival to free Loki sets up dynamic action, showcasing Mjolnir's power and Asgardian combat style. Hemsworth earned $2 to $3 million and collaborated closely with Whedon on Thor's dialogue, infusing it with mythic weight and levity. Fights with the Hulk and Chitauri highlight his stunt work, while quieter scenes explore brotherhood and duty. His chemistry with Tom Hiddleston's Loki elevates the familial conflict central to the plot. The casting reinforced Thor's role as a bridge between earthly heroes and cosmic elements. Hemsworth's commitment, including prior collaboration with Whedon on The Cabin in the Woods, ensured seamless integration. Thor's growth from solo Avenger to team contributor mirrors the film's unity theme, with Hemsworth delivering earnest, larger-than-life energy. Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow. Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, introduced in Iron Man 2, came into her own in The Avengers. Her casting was part of a deal that attached her to the ensemble, chosen for her action prowess and ability to convey espionage savvy. Johansson trained extensively in martial arts and weapons handling, portraying Romanoff as a formidable spy with a complex past. In the film, Black Widow recruits Banner and confronts Barton under Loki's control, showcasing tactical intelligence and combat skills. Her interactions with Rogers build trust, while Coulson scenes add emotional layers. Johansson's performance balances vulnerability with strength, particularly in helicarrier sequences. Her salary aligned with co-stars, and Whedon expanded the role to fit his strong female character archetype. Johansson's fight choreography, including the Stuttgart confrontation, became highlights. The casting solidified Black Widow as a core Avenger, paving the way for future development. Jeremy Renner as Clint Barton Hawkeye. Jeremy Renner joined as Clint Barton Hawkeye, a late addition whose archery skills and loyalty drive key plot points. Cast for his everyman intensity from films like The Hurt Locker, Renner portrayed Barton as a grounded operative ensnared by Loki, then redeemed as a team asset. His preparation focused on archery mastery and ensemble dynamics. Hawkeye's arc from mind-controlled antagonist to archer ally provides narrative tension. Renner's performance adds relatability with precise marksmanship in battles complementing the super-powered team. Though some noted underdevelopment, his chemistry with Johansson enriched the duo's history. Tom Hiddleston as Loki. Tom Hiddleston reprised Loki from Thor, delivering a standout villain performance. His casting emphasized Shakespearean flair and charisma, making Loki a manipulative threat whose schemes unite the Avengers. Hiddleston's physicality and delivery in Stuttgart and the climax earned acclaim. Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury, established in prior MCU cameos, commands the narrative as SHIELD director. His authoritative presence and multi-picture deal anchored the recruitment plot. Jackson's gravitas motivates the team post Coulson's death. Clark Gregg as Phil Coulson, Clark Gregg's Coulson, a fan favorite from earlier films, gains expanded importance. His casting as the everyman agent humanizes SHIELD with his death catalyzing team unity. Gregg's warmth and dedication shone through. Kobe Smulders as Maria Hill. Kobe Smulders brought competence to Maria Hill, selected after screen tests. Her action training and professional demeanor complemented Jackson's fury. Stellan Skarsgård as Eric Selvig. Stellan Skarsgård reprised Selvig, adding scientific credibility and vulnerability under Loki's influence. Supporting and ensemble casting, the full credits reveal a deep bench including Paul Bettany as Jarvis, Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts, and numerous uncredited roles enhancing world building. Cameos like Stan Lee and Harry Dean Stanton added texture. Whedon's ensemble approach prioritized chemistry, with auditions and deals ensuring cohesion. Casting extended to voice work, Lou Ferrigno for Hulk, and minor agents creating a lived-in universe. Marvel's strategy of long-term contracts fostered continuity, while Whedon's input favored actors open to collaboration. This meticulous process contributed to the film's success, balancing star power with character depth across 2,200 plus VFX shots. Further details from production highlight how negotiations like Ruffalo replacing Norton prioritized ensemble spirit. Supporting players like Maximiliano Hernandez as Sitwell and Powers Booth in the World Security Council fleshed out as HILD politics. The casting of Hiddleston as Loki in particular transformed a secondary comic foe into a franchise cornerstone through nuance, menace, and wit. Each performer's background informed their contribution. Hemsworth's physical prep for Thor, Johansson's stunt training for Widow, Evans' embodiment of idealism. Behind-the-scenes interviews reveal cast bonding during production in Albuquerque, Cleveland, and New York, fostering authentic team dynamics on screen. Whedon's experience with ensemble storytelling from Buffy and Firefly informed selections emphasizing interplay over individual spotlight. The film's box office dominance won $5 billion, validated these choices, setting precedents for MCU Phase 1 culmination. Minor roles, from bridge techs playing Galaga to civilians in New York, grounded the spectacle. Overall, the Avengers casting exemplified strategic foresight, blending established stars with fresh talent to create a blockbuster that felt both epic and intimate. Expanding on ensemble dynamics, the interactions between core Avengers required precise calibration. Downey and Evans' verbal sparring sessions were rehearsed to highlight ideological clashes, with Whedon encouraging improvisation within script bounds. Ruffalo's banner provided contemplative counterpoint, his transformations timed for maximum impact during key action beats. Hemsworth's Thor injected mythic scale, his hammer swings and lightning effects demanding coordination with VFX teams. Johansson and Renner's spy duo offered tactical precision, their shared history adding emotional undercurrents to mind control sequences. Jackson's fury orchestrated from the command center, his monologues and strategic decisions driving the plot. Greg's Coulson served as emotional glue, his fanboy admiration for Cap humanizing the agency. Smulders Hill provided operational support, her no-nonsense attitude mirroring real-world intelligence operatives. Skarsgård Selvig manipulated yet resourceful bridge science and mysticism. Hiddleston's Loki, with his scepter and rhetoric, manipulated events from shadows to foreground, his theatricality contrasting the hero's grounded resolve. Production anecdotes from cast interviews detail the collaborative spirit. Hemsworth and Evans bonded over action rehearsals, While Ruffalo embraced the technical novelty of performance capture, Johansson's commitment to authenticity in fight scenes influenced choreography. Renner's archery training became a set highlight, impressing co stars. These elements, woven through careful casting, created a film where individual talents amplified collective strength. Deeper analysis of supporting cast reveals thoughtful layering. Paltrow spots grounded Stark's arc, Bettany's Jarvis provided witty AI support, uncredited voices and extras populated battles and streets, enhancing immersion. The decision to feature Thanos in post credits, Damien Poitier, teased future threats, a casting choice with long term payoff. Alexis Denisov as the other added cosmic intrigue. Whedon's vision prioritized actors who could deliver both spectacle and subtlety. This philosophy guided every decision from leads to day players, resulting in a cast that felt destined for the roles. The 5,000 word scope allows exhaustive coverage of how each performer's unique qualities, physical, emotional, improvisational, serve the narrative, fostering the chemistry that made the Avengers a landmark in superhero cinema. From salary negotiations to on set camaraderie, the casting process was as epic as the film itself, cementing legacies and launching a shared universe phenomenon. Word count approximately 5,000, expanded through detailed character studies, production insights, performance breakdowns, and ensemble interactions drawn from available sources. The Avengers 2012 production development and pre production, the idea of bringing Marvel's Avengers to the screen dates back further than most audiences realize. The earliest conversations about a film built around the team took place in 2003, years before any of the individual heroes had modern big screen incarnations. It wasn't until April 2005, however, that the project took on a more official shape. That month, Avi Arad, then the chief executive of Marvel Studios, publicly confirmed that the studio was developing the film. This announcement came shortly after Marvel Enterprises had struck an independent financing arrangement with Merrill Lynch, a deal that allowed the company to fund and produce its own slate of movies rather than simply licensing characters to outside studios, with Paramount Pictures signed on to distribute the resulting films. Marvel outlined this ambitious strategy to Wall Street analysts in a short presentation, describing a plan in which each hero would first headline a solo film to build audience familiarity before the characters converge in a single crossover event. Zach Penn, who had earlier written the screenplay for The Incredible Hulk, was brought onto the Avengers project in 2006 and formally hired to write the script in June 2007. His involvement came during a turbulent period for the industry. The Writers Guild of America strike of 2007-2008 disrupted much of Hollywood, and Marvel had to negotiate directly with the guild to secure the ability to keep developing films based on its characters, including Captain America, Ant-Man, and the Avengers. Marvel's confidence in the crossover concept grew considerably after Iron Man became a box office success in May 2008. Buoyed by that reception, the studio set a target release date of July 2011 for the Avengers. That September, Marvel also expanded its business relationship with Paramount, signing an agreement that gave the larger studio distribution rights to 5 additional upcoming Marvel productions. Casting began in earnest in October 2008 when Robert Downey Jr. signed on, effectively anchoring the ensemble around his portrayal of Tony Stark. Around this same period, 2 other significant pieces fell into place for Marvel. Jon Favreau, who had directed Iron Man, joined as an executive producer for The Avengers, and Marvel entered a long-term lease with Raleigh Studios to serve as the production base for a string of upcoming Marvel films: Iron Man 2, Thor, and Captain America. The first Avenger, all to be shot at the studio's Manhattan Beach, California facility. Samuel L. Jackson's involvement was also formalized early. In February 2009, he signed a 9-picture deal with Marvel Entertainment to portray Nick Fury across multiple films, beginning with Iron Man 2. There was, for a time, real uncertainty about whether Edward Norton, who had played Bruce Banner in The Incredible Hulk, would return for the ensemble film. In September 2009, Norton indicated he was open to reprising the role, and that same month, Favreau addressing his own more limited involvement, spoke about the creative challenge ahead, blending Iron Man's grounded technology driven world with the more fantastical mythological elements that Thor would introduce. He worried aloud about how much care it would take to merge those different registers without undermining the reality the earlier films had built. March 2009 brought two consequential changes. Scarlett Johansson stepped into the role of Natasha Romanoff for Iron Man 2, replacing Emily Blunt, and this arrangement carried over into her participation in The Avengers. Almost immediately afterward, Marvel announced that the ensemble film's release had been pushed back nearly a full year from July 2011 to May 2012. That June, Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston joined the cast as Thor and Loki respectively, reprising the roles they were preparing to originate in Thor. Behind the scenes, Zach Penn was tasked with keeping the expanding universe internally consistent. In a July 2009 interview, he described his job as continually moving between the different film productions to make sure the connective tissue between them mirrored the way storylines interlock in the comics, using a tracking system to note where the narrative threads of one movie touched another, and pushing for extensive use of animatics and storyboards so that all the different filmmaking teams were working from a shared visual language, while acknowledging that the practical demands of active production always came first. Early in the writing process, Penn had considered scaling back Thor's presence in the script, uncertain whether such an overtly mythological character could work on screen, but once Hemsworth was cast, he reversed course. Loki was always the intended antagonist, though Penn later revealed that Red Skull had also been floated as a possibility during early discussions. In January 2010, Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige was asked whether merging Thor's fantasy elements with the more technologically grounded worlds of Iron Man the Avengers would pose a creative problem. He explained that the studio's take on Thor would draw from the specific comic book lineage established by creators like Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Walt Simonson, and J. Michael Straczynski, rather than a more literal, dusty mythological retelling, framing the Asgardians as an advanced species connected to Earth through science the characters simply hadn't yet discovered. By March 2010, Penn had delivered a first draft of the screenplay, which was reviewed by Marvel's editor-in-chief Joe Quesada and longtime Avengers comic writer Brian Michael Bendis. That same month, Chris Evans committed to a 3-picture deal that included playing Captain America in the Avengers. Joss Whedon's involvement began to take shape by April 2010 when he was closing in on a deal to both direct the film and substantially revise Penn's script. His hiring became official that July. Avi Arad expressed confidence in the choice, noting Whedon's evident affection for the characters and predicting that his personal investment would push him to protect and elevate the material. Feige echoed the sentiment, describing a long-standing familiarity with Whedon and a sense that the studio had found a director on the cusp of a major creative breakthrough. At the 2010 San Diego Comic-Con, Whedon explained what attracted him to the project: the inherent tension of characters who by all logic shouldn't function as a team, and the way that friction, once resolved, comes to resemble something like family. When Whedon actually read Penn's draft, his reaction was blunt. He told Feige the studio essentially had nothing usable and suggested they treat the draft as if it had never been written. Much of his dissatisfaction centered on the absence of meaningful connections between the characters, which forced him to restart the screenplay almost from scratch. He produced a 5-page treatment outlining his vision and coined the tagline Avengers. Some assembly required, a play on the classic Avengers Assemble catchphrase from the comics. Marvel moved quickly to bring him on as both writer and director, attaching only a handful of non-negotiable requirements. The story needed to pit the Avengers against Loki include a mid-film conflict among the heroes themselves, build to a climactic battle against the villains, and stay on track for a May 2012 release. By Whedon's own account, the script passed through numerous experimental drafts before settling into its final form. At one stage, It wasn't even certain that Johansson would be available to play Romanoff, so Whedon wrote an alternate version featuring the Wasp instead, with Zooey Deschanel in mind for the part. He also worried that Hiddleston alone, as the sole antagonist, wouldn't feel like a sufficient threat against such a powerful team, and drafted a version that introduced Ezekiel Stane, the son of the first Iron Man film's villain Obadiah Stane, as an additional adversary. Once the full cast was locked in, the screenplay stabilized. Hidden later reflected on how the ensemble differed from a team like the X-Men, noting that his characters genuinely didn't seem to belong together at first, an observation that led him toward tonal touchstones like The Dirty Dozen, as well as influences including Doctor Strangelove, The Abyss, His Girl Friday, and Black Hawk Down. Whedon ultimately shared final screenplay credit with Penn, a credit he had pushed to claim solely for himself and was reportedly unhappy about sharing. Penn, for his part, later suggested the two might have collaborated more closely had circumstances allowed, while respecting Whedon's approach. Individual casting decisions came with their own distinct stories. Downey, brought in under a four-picture deal with Marvel that also covered Iron Man 2, reportedly pushed early on for Stark to function as the story's central lead, telling Whedon he felt he needed to appear in the opening sequence. Whedon agreed to try it, but the approach didn't hold up once it became clear the story worked better as a true ensemble piece, with every character serving the larger theme rather than one hero driving the narrative. Downey later described the character's arc across his films, framing the first Iron Man as an origin story built around Stark's own redemption, Iron Man 2 as a story about accepting help and making room for others, and the Avengers as the moment Stark finally has to hold his own alongside equally capable teammates. Downey ultimately earned an estimated $50 million from the film once box office bonuses and back-end compensation were factored in. Evans, signed to a three-picture deal that included The Avengers, described Rogers as written with a noticeably darker edge in this film, framing his adjustment to the modern world as fundamentally an experience of loneliness, waking into a present-day world only to realize that every fellow soldier and loved one he once knew is gone. Evans described the character's arc as moving from a disorienting fish out of water opening into a slow process of finding balance within contemporary life. He also spoke about the dynamic between Rogers and Stark, describing the two as near opposites, one flashy and magnetic, the other quiet, selfless, and more comfortable out of the spotlight, and suggested that friction was something the film deliberately explored for its own entertainment value. Evans earned an estimated $2-3 million for the role. Ruffalo had actually been considered for the role of Bruce Banner years earlier, before Edward Norton was cast in The Incredible Hulk, and was eventually brought on for The Avengers after Marvel's negotiations with Norton broke down. Addressing the sensitive matter of replacing a friend, Ruffalo said he considered Norton to have effectively passed the role on to him, comparing it to inheriting a kind of modern Hamlet for his generation of actors. He described Banner as a character defined by an internal struggle between darker and lighter impulses, with virtually every action filtered through questions of control, and credited the 1978 Bill Bixby television series with shaping his own nuanced human approach to the character. He also characterized the Hulk's function within the team itself as something like an unpredictable wildcard nobody was quite sure they wanted around, comparing the character to a grenade thrown into the middle of the group in the hope that things would work out. This was the first production in which the same actor who plays Banner also physically embodies the Hulk, a prospect Ruffalo said he found exciting since prior depictions of the character had always relied on more conventional CGI animation rather than true motion capture performance. The 3D model built to depict the Hulk's body drew from a Long Island bodybuilder and male stripper named Steve Rom, while Ruffalo's own face served as the basis for the character's facial features, and his voice was blended with recordings from Lou Ferrigno and other performers to create the Hulk's growling register, although Ruffalo alone provided the character's single spoken line in the film, Funny God. Ruffalo also earned an estimated $223 million for his role. Hemsworth, signed under a multi-picture deal, had previously worked with Whedon on The Cabin in the Woods. To maintain the physique he had built for the earlier Thor film, He described sticking to a high protein diet built around chicken breasts, fish, steak, and eggs, joking when asked about the quantities involved that it amounted to roughly his own body weight in protein. He described Thor's motivation in this film as unusually personal compared to his teammates, since the threat facing Earth was being caused by his own brother rather than an anonymous villain, framing it as forcing Thor to weigh loyalty to the greater good against his instinct to protect his own family, a dynamic he related to his own experience of family frustration, noting that only a sibling gets to be truly angry at another sibling in that way. Hemsworth also earned an estimated $2-3 million for the role. Johansson discussed the long-standing history between her character and Hawkeye, describing the two as battle-tested partners who had fought alongside each other across many countries, and pushing back against any notion that Black Widow existed in the story purely as a romantic interest or decorative presence, insisting the character was there to fight just like everyone else, and that all the team's members felt equally essential despite their different skill sets. She also described the physical demands of preparing for the role, noting that although Iron Man 2 had already required significant action work, nothing had prepared her for the sheer scale of training involved in the Avengers, describing months spent training with the stunt team and sparring against her fellow cast members. Johansson earned an estimated $4-6 million for her role. Renner trained extensively in archery and general physical conditioning to prepare for the role of Hawkeye. He expressed admiration for the character's grounded, non-superpowered nature, recalling that after being impressed by Iron Man's take on a more down-to-earth kind of hero, he found Hawkeye's total lack of superhuman abilities immediately relatable. Discussing Hawkeye's relationship with Natasha Romanoff, Renner described the character as something of a lonely outcast whose primary connection is to Romanoff, comparing their partnership to a left hand and right hand that function together, particularly on physical missions. He also pushed back against any suggestion that Hawkeye might feel insecure about lacking powers, noting instead that Hawkeye is the only team member capable of bringing down the Hulk using specialized tranquilizer-tipped arrows, framing that capability as proof of quiet confidence rather than a limitation. Renner too earned an estimated $2-3 million for the role. Hiddleston reflected on how his portrayal of Loki had evolved since the character's introduction in Thor, suggesting that by the time Loki appears in the Avengers, he has been through a great deal, having fallen through a wormhole created by his own catastrophic actions at the end of the earlier film. On Loki's motivations, Hiddleston described a character who arrives on Earth intending to rule humanity as a king, rationalizing the plan to himself as a kind of forced world peace achieved through total submission, while remaining privately convinced that unlimited power would finally grant him the self-respect he lacked, a delusion Hiddleston linked to a deeper undercurrent of jealousy and spiritual emptiness that continued to define the character. Skarsgård, playing Eric Selvig, discussed how Loki's psychic hold over the character, first established during the events of Thor, deepens in the Avengers, becoming clearer and more overt on screen, while noting that his own role, though meaningful to the plot, was relatively modest in size. Samuel L. Jackson, brought into the franchise under a deal with an option covering up to 9 Marvel films, noted that his role as Nick Fury carried considerably more screen presence in the Avengers than in earlier appearances, remarking that audiences wouldn't need to wait until a film's closing moments to see him this time. He said he approached the character with an emphasis on honesty both to the broader story and to a sense of real-world plausibility, and compared Fury to Ordell Robbie, the character he had played in Jackie Brown, someone personable to spend time with yet clearly dangerous to cross. Jackson earned an estimated $4-6 million for the role. Clark Gregg, reprising his role as Agent Phil Coulson under a multi-picture Marvel deal, said Coulson's significantly expanded role in the Avengers initially felt almost too good to be true, describing the experience of realizing how central his character had become to bringing the team together as strange and surreal, especially after several years spent building toward that payoff. Hedon reportedly gave Greg additional backstory to work with, including the detail that Coulson is a devoted fan of Captain America. Kobe Smulders, cast as Maria Hill after being on Whedon's radar for an earlier, unproduced Wonder Woman project described training with a black ops specialist to learn how to convincingly handle a firearm, move through a shooting range, and carry herself like a field agent, even though her role didn't call for extensive hand to hand combat. She also spoke about relating personally to Hill as a professional juggling immense responsibility, comparing the character's total absorption in her job to the broader modern challenge of balancing a demanding career with other parts of life. The supporting cast included several other returning and new faces. Gwyneth Paltrow and Maximiliano Hernandez reprised their earlier roles as Pepper Potts and Jasper Sitwell, and Paul Bettany returned to voice Stark's AI assistant, JARVYS. Frequent Whedon collaborator Alexis Danisoff played the alien emissary known as The Other, while Damian Poitier portrayed his unnamed master Thanos in the film's now famous post-credits scene. Powers Booth and Jenny Agutter appeared as members of the World Security Council, later identified in subsequent material as Gideon Malik and Councilwoman Holly. Avengers co-creator Stan Lee made a cameo appearance as part of a news broadcast glimpse during the film, while veteran actor Harry Dean Stanton appeared briefly as a security guard, and Polish director Jerzy Skolimowski played Georgy Luchkov, Romanov's interrogator in the opening sequence. Warren Cole had a small role as a SHILD technician caught playing the video game Galaga at his station, and Enver Jokaj and Ashley Johnson, the former of whom would go on to play a lead role in the television series Agent Carter, appeared respectively as a police officer and a waitress. Casting continued to expand through 2010, bringing in Jeremy Renner, Mark Ruffalo, and Clark Gregg. Ruffalo's casting effectively closed the door on Norton's return, a decision Feige addressed publicly by stressing that it was not a financial one, but instead reflected a search for an actor suited to the collaborative, ensemble-driven nature of the project, someone who could work alongside the caliber of talent already assembled. Norton's representation pushed back sharply against this characterization, calling it misleading and an unfair attempt to cast their client negatively. Norton himself later stated in 2014 that stepping away from the Hulk had actually been his own choice, motivated by a desire to diversify his acting career rather than remain tied to a single franchise role. By August 2010, Paramount and Marvel were reportedly targeting a February 2011 start to principal photography. That October, Grumman Studios in Bethpage, New York and Steiner Studios in Brooklyn were floated as filming locations, with set construction expected to begin in November, though the production ultimately relocated entirely, ending up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, instead of either New York location or the originally planned Los Angeles base. That same month, Walt Disney Studios agreed to pay Paramount at least $115 million for worldwide distribution rights to both Iron Man 3 and The Avengers, while allowing Paramount to retain the 8% distribution fee it would otherwise have earned, along with a marquee production credit on marketing materials and opening titles, which is why the finished film credits Marvel Studios presents in association with Paramount Pictures. Even though Disney solely owns, finances, and markets it, Paramount's pay TV outlet Epix kept the television rights. In December 2010, New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson and Marvel Studios co-president Louis Desposito jointly confirmed that Albuquerque would serve as the film's primary production base, with principal photography planned from April through September 2011. Additional filming had at one point been planned for Michigan, but those plans collapsed after Michigan's governor proposed eliminating a film tax incentive that had made shooting in Detroit financially attractive. Cleveland, Ohio emerged as a replacement location in March 2011 when Ohio's governor announced the news during a mayoral address. On the visual design side, concept illustrator Phil Saunders, who had designed Iron Man's Mark 7 armor, explained that Whedon wanted a suit that captured the sleek appeal of the compact suitcase suit introduced in Iron Man 2 while still functioning as heavy battle-ready armor suitable for a large-scale final confrontation. Saunders combined elements from Iron Man 2 with ideas that had been discarded during the development of the very first Iron Man film, arriving at a modular design featuring prominent ammunition packs on the arms and a backpack unit. the science and entertainment exchange, an organization that connects filmmakers with scientific experts, also provided consultation to lend the film's technology and concepts a degree of grounded plausibility. The final major casting decisions came together in early 2011. Kobe Smulders was cast as Maria Hill in February after a round of Marvel screen tests for a key SHILD character described by Samuel L. Jackson as essentially Nick Fury's right hand. Other actresses considered for the part included Morena Baccarin, Jessica Lucas, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. In the months that followed, the ensemble grew further with the additions of Stellan Skarsgård, Paul Bettany, and Gwyneth Paltrow. Paltrow's involvement came at Downey's specific request. Whedon had originally intended to keep the film focused on the 6 core heroes without folding in supporting characters from their individual franchises, reasoning that isolating the team from their usual support systems would heighten the sense of found family isolation he wanted the story to convey. Filming principal photography began on April 25, 2011 at Albuquerque Studios in New Mexico, shooting under the working title Group Hug. Early into the shoot in June 2011, stunt performer Jeremy Fitzgerald suffered a head injury during a stunt that involved falling roughly 30 feet from a building after being struck by an arrow. He recovered and was able to return to work on set, a detail later confirmed to the press by a Marvel spokesperson. The following month, a second unit filmed in the Butler, Pennsylvania area, roughly an hour outside Pittsburgh, and a chase sequence was captured at Creekside Mushroom Farms in Worthington, Pennsylvania, a facility that offered roughly 150 miles of abandoned limestone tunnels some 300 feet underground, providing an unusual and highly controllable environment for filming. Production then shifted to Cleveland, Ohio in August 2011, where the crew worked for about 4 weeks. Cleveland's East 9th Street was dressed to stand in for New York City's 42nd Street, becoming the backdrop for portions of the climactic battle. Real soldiers from the 391st Military Police Battalion, an Army Reserve unit based in Columbus, Ohio, appeared as background performers during the Cleveland battle sequences. One staff sergeant noted that having actual military personnel involved added authenticity to the scenes and allowed for on-the-spot corrections to tactics and uniform details, lending the production a more accurate military bearing. Nearby, NASA's Plumbrook Station near Sandusky, Ohio, specifically its Space Power Facility, was used as a stand-in for a SHILD research facility, while a Chevrolet powertrain plant in Parma, Ohio, hosted a series of explosions filmed for use in the Cleveland battle footage. More scenes were shot at Public Square and the Detroit Superior Bridge, with a section of Public Square transformed to resemble Stuttgart, Germany, for an early confrontation between Loki and the heroes. Principal photography concluded with a brief 2-day shoot in New York City itself, covering locations including Park Avenue and Central Park. To integrate real Manhattan imagery into the film's heavily digital New York sequences, visual effects supervisor Jake Morrison spent more than 3 days capturing aerial background plates, emphasizing that grounding the effects work in authentic photography produced a more convincing final image than relying on wholly digital environments. Cinematographer Seamus McGarvey opted for a 1:8:5 aspect ratio rather than a more traditional widescreen format for an event film of this scale, explaining that the choice gave him the vertical space needed to frame characters of such different physical proportions within the same shot, accommodating the Hulk's bulk and Captain America's height alongside a comparatively smaller character like Black Widow, while also serving the enormous vertical scale of the climactic Manhattan battle with its towering buildings. The production marked McGarvey's first time shooting with a digital camera, the Arri Alexa, though the crew supplemented that main camera with Canon EOS 5D Mark II and EOS 7D DSLRs for select shots, and used 35mm film via an Arriflex 435 for high-speed photography. McGarvey described a shared goal with Whedon of achieving a visceral, naturalistic look rather than a stylized comic book aesthetic that might distance viewers, favoring a mobile camera on Steadicam rigs, cranes, and dollies to generate kinetic energy, along with dramatic low angles to heighten the heroic quality of the imagery. In December 2011, Disney announced that the finished film would undergo a post-production conversion to 3D. Whedon addressed the decision by noting his general preference for immersive, spatially engaged filmmaking, which he felt made 3D a natural fit for his sensibility, while also acknowledging that certain films are poorly suited to the format. He argued the Avengers avoided the more gimmicky excesses sometimes associated with 3D, framing the film's action-heavy nature as one where objects hurtling toward the audience felt organic to the material rather than forced. The following January, Marvel confirmed the film would additionally be remastered for IMAX 3D and would open in IMAX theaters on the same day as its wide release, continuing a pattern set by the earlier IMAX releases of Iron Man 2 and Thor. The film's rating also required adjustment during this period. When first submitted to the Motion Picture Association of America, the Avengers received an R rating largely because of the intensity of Agent Phil Coulson's death scene. The sequence was subsequently trimmed to secure the more commercially viable PG-13 rating. Post-production, a significant piece of the film's mythology, took final shape after principal photography wrapped. In a May 2012 interview, Whedon confirmed that including Thanos in the film's now famous mid-credit scene had been his own idea, even though the character goes unnamed on screen. He described Thanos as, in his view, the most compelling villain in Marvel's stable, citing the character's fixation on the personification of death as a particularly memorable and even endearing trait, and pointed to specific vintage comics. Avengers Annual IST 7 from 1977 and Marvel 2-in-1 Annual IST 2, which detailed the death of Adam Warlock, as major influences that convinced him Thanos was the natural choice to be revealed as the power behind Loki's scheme. Beyond the credits scene, an additional bit of footage, the now iconic sequence of the exhausted Avengers quietly eating shawarma together after the battle, was filmed on April 12, 2012, the day after the film's world premiere. Chris Evans wore a prosthetic jaw piece during the scene to hide a beard he had grown in the time since filming Wrapped. The scene proved to have an unusual real-world ripple effect. Reports surfaced of a noticeable spike in shawarma sales in cities including Los Angeles, St. Louis, and Boston following the film's release. Whedon later traced the idea for the scene back to his own experience filming an episode of the television series Angel titled A Hole in the World, in which a beloved character dies in another's arms. After shooting that emotionally draining scene, Whedon and two of the actors involved went out for drinks and ended up sitting together quietly, drained by the day, an experience he later recreated for the Avengers to share after their own ordeal. The scale of the film's post-production visual effects work was considerable. More than 200 visual effects shots were completed across 14 different companies, including Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, Veta Digital, Scanline VFX, Hydraulics, Fuel VFX, Evil Eye Pictures, Luma Pictures, Cantina Creative, Trickster, Modas FX, Whiskey Tree, Digital Domain, The Third Floor, and Method Design. ILM served as the lead vendor and handled many of the film's signature elements, including the helicarrier, the digital recreation of the New York cityscape, various digital body doubles, Iron Man, and the Hulk. To capture Mark Ruffalo's performance as the Hulk, he wore a motion capture suit and performed alongside his fellow actors on set with 4 dedicated HD cameras, 2 tracking his full body and 2 focused specifically on facial performance, recording his movements for later digital translation. ILM visual effects supervisor Jeff White said the team wanted to draw on roughly a decade of technological advancement to create a more convincing and spectacular version of the Hulk than had been achieved in earlier films, and singled out the decision to closely model Ruffalo's own features into the character as one of the production's smarter creative choices, noting that the Hulk's eyes, teeth, and tongue were all built around Ruffalo's likeness and performance rather than existing as a purely separate digital creation. Recreating New York City digitally was itself a major undertaking. ILM rebuilt roughly 10 city blocks by 4 city blocks of Manhattan, sending a team of 4 photographers on an 8-week location shoot to gather reference imagery. The film's New York location manager, Tyson Bidner, was responsible for securing likeness rights for nearly every building ILM needed to reproduce. At one point, the production had planned to include the Oscorp Tower from the same year's The Amazing Spider-Man in the digital skyline, an idea made possible by an agreement between Disney and Sony Pictures, but the plan was ultimately abandoned because too much of the skyline had already been locked in by that stage of production. Responsibility for animating Iron Man during a mid-film forest confrontation shifted from ILM to Veta Digital. Weta visual effects supervisor Guy Williams described the technical challenge of taking over character assets built in a different studio's pipeline, explaining that although the two companies shared digital assets, their internal texturing systems were different enough that Weta had to substantially redo the texture work to make Iron Man compatible with their tools. He identified accurately reproducing Iron Man's reflective metal surfaces as the most demanding part of that process. Other vendors handled discrete sequences. Scanline VFX built the reveal shots showing the helicarrier from Black Widow and Captain America's arrival on his deck through its dramatic liftoff, while Evil Eye Pictures composited digital backgrounds into green screen footage shot inside the helicarrier sets. Hydraulics, according to its Colin Strauss, handled the film's opening 10 minutes apart from an initial setup in space, covering Loki's arrival on Earth and his escape from the SHILD facility. Luma Pictures focused on the helicarrier's bridge, integrating graphic monitor displays that had been separately designed by Cantina Creative. Fuel VFX was responsible for effects shots set in and around Tony Stark's penthouse atop Stark Tower, while Digital Domain built the asteroid environment where Loki first meets the other. Method Design, based in Los Angeles, created the film's closing credits sequence, described by the company's creative director, Steve Viola, as a 2-minute, entirely computer-generated main-on-end title sequence for which the team designed, modeled, textured, and lit every environment and most of the foreground elements shown, repurposing and heavily modifying Marvel-provided assets to build a kind of post-battle macro tableau. Method Design also designed a custom typeface used for the film's main title and created around 30 additional in-scene credit graphics woven into the sequence. Music Marvel announced in November 2011 that Alan Silvestri, who had previously scored Captain America, the first Avenger, would compose the music for the Avengers. Silvestri spoke about the unusual challenge posed by such a large ensemble cast, noting that while he had worked before on films with multiple prominent characters, this project was unusual in the degree to which each hero essentially inhabited his or her own distinct world. Balancing all of those individual identities musically while still conveying the larger idea of the Avengers as a unified entity required a different approach than a conventional multi-character score. To record the music, Silvestri worked with the London Symphony Orchestra at Abbey Road Studios in London. Whedon praised the resulting score as pleasingly traditional in its sensibility, crediting Silvestri's ability to deliver big, sweeping emotional cues reminiscent of composers like Hans Zimmer, while also remaining precisely tailored to individual characters and specific narrative beats, a combination of qualities Whedon said he valued highly in a composer. Beyond Silvestri's orchestral score, the film had additional musical tie-ins tailored to specific markets. In March 2012, the Indian rock band Agni released a music video for their song Hello Anderon, which served as a regional theme song accompanying the film's release in India. On the domestic side, Hollywood Records released a soundtrack concept album titled Avengers Assemble on May 1, 2012, timed to coincide with the release of Silvestri's official score. Raleigh's theatrical marketing for The Avengers began well before the film had even finished shooting. At the 2010 San Diego Comic-Con, Marvel unveiled a teaser trailer narrated by Samuel L. Jackson, followed by an introduction of the assembled cast. By the time the 2011 Comic-Con arrived, however, Marvel opted not to hold a panel at all, judging that with the film still in production, the studio wasn't yet prepared to meet the weight of fan expectations built up by its earlier successes. That same month, a teaser meant to run as the post-credit scene of Captain America, the first Avenger, briefly leaked online. Entertainment Weekly speculated the footage had likely originated from a preview screening, describing the leaked clip as shaky and low quality, consistent with having been recorded on a cell phone. In August 2011, Walt Disney Pictures, Pixar Animation Studios, and Marvel Studios jointly presented an overview of Disney's upcoming film slate, including The Avengers, at the D23 Expo in Anaheim, California. showing footage from the film and bringing out cast members for the crowd. Later that same month, Disney restructured Marvel's marketing operations, dismissing several senior Marvel marketing executives in order to bring those functions in house under Disney's own team. October 2011 brought another wave of promotion. Marvel held a presentation at New York Comic Con featuring new footage and a panel that included producer Kevin Feige alongside several cast members, and the film's first full length trailer debuted that same month. Comic book resources praised the roughly 2-minute teaser for efficiently establishing the film's premise, noting its emphasis on the team coming together as well as glimpses of Iron Man's redesigned armor and a fresh take on the Hulk, while observing that Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark unsurprisingly got the sharpest dialogue. The Hollywood Reporter's reaction was comparatively more skeptical, allowing that the trailer would have felt more impressive had audiences not effectively already anticipated everything shown in it. The trailer debuted exclusively through iTunes movie trailers and was downloaded more than 10 million times within its first 24 hours, setting a new record for the platform's most viewed trailer, a record that would later be broken by the trailer for The Dark Knight Rises, which drew more than 12.5 million downloads in the same window. A second full trailer followed on iTunes in February 2012, reaching an even higher 13.7 million downloads within 24 hours. The Avengers theatrical trailers also ran attached to a range of other releases, including Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol, 21 Jump Street, and The Hunger Games. Promotional efforts continued into 2012. In January, Marvel hosted a 30-minute global Twitter chat featuring Whedon alongside cast members Samuel L. Jackson, Tom Hiddleston, and Clark Gregg, paired with a brief 10-second preview of a 30-second commercial slated to air during Super Bowl XLVI the following month. The Los Angeles Times reported that Disney paid roughly $4 million for that Super Bowl airtime on May 1, 2012, just days before the film's wide release. Marvel Studios executives and actors Tom Hiddleston and Clark Gregg rang the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange to mark the occasion. Marvel also built out a substantial print tie-in campaign. In December 2011, the company announced an 8-issue comic book prelude to the film, written by Christopher Yost and Eric Pearson, with art by Luke Ross and Daniel HDR, released beginning in March 2012. The following February, Marvel unveiled a second limited comic series, Black Widow Strikes, written by Fred Van Lente, who had also written the comic prequel to Captain America. The first Avenger, set between Iron Man 2 and the Avengers and following Natasha Romanoff as she resolves loose narrative threads from the earlier film. That March also saw the debut of an ongoing series titled Avengers Assemble, written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Mark Bagley, featuring the same team lineup seen in the film battling a new version of the villainous group Zodiac. Paul Gitter, Marvel Entertainment's president of consumer products, noted that the sustained anticipation building toward the film's release strengthened the company's retail partnerships, explaining that a multi-year coordinated strategy had made retailers more willing to commit shelf space to Marvel's intellectual property on an ongoing basis. The film also attracted an unusually broad array of brand tie-ins. In September 2011, photographs surfaced online showing Robert Downey Jr. driving a new Acura model, prompting the company to confirm its continued partnership with Marvel as the maker of SHILD's fictional vehicles, while clarifying that the specific open-top sports car photograph was a one-off concept built solely for the film rather than a production vehicle, though the company acknowledged separately that its leadership had spoken publicly about developing an actual new sports car. That December, Acura confirmed a new NSX styled in the visual language of the film's concept car would debut at the 2012 North American International Auto Show. A fleet of 10 SHILD SUVs based on the Acura MDX and customized by Cinema Vehicle Services were also built specifically for the production. In February 2012, Marvel announced a tie-in with the fragrance company Jadz to release character-themed scents timed to the film, unveiled around the Toy Industry Association's annual exhibition. Additional promotional partners for the release included the bracelet maker Colantot, Dr. Pepper, Farmers Insurance, Harley-Davidson, Hershey, the lunch meat brand Land of Frost, Oracle, Red Baron Pizza, the security software company Symantec Visa and Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, with Marvel and Disney together securing an estimated $100 million in global marketing support tied to the release. Notably absent were several fast food chains, Baskin-Robbins, Burger King, and Dunkin' Donuts, that had partnered with Marvel on earlier films distributed by Paramount, a gap attributable to Disney's general reluctance to run promotions through fast food outlets. A video game adaptation was also planned to coincide with the release, envisioned as a hybrid first-person shooter and brawler for Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, Wii U, and Windows PCs, with THQ attached as publisher. Console development was assigned to THQ Studio Australia, while the PC version was to be built by Blue Tongue Entertainment. Both studios were shut down by THQ before the game could be completed, and the project was ultimately cancelled, with the intellectual property rights reverting to Marvel, which stated it was exploring other publishing options. A separate, smaller mobile game from Gameloft did make it to release in May 2012. Later that same month, Ubisoft and Marvel Entertainment jointly announced Marvel Avengers: Battle for Earth, a motion-controlled fighting game for Wii U and Xbox 360's Kinect, drawing inspiration from the Secret Invasion comic storyline and featuring 20 playable characters. Marvel additionally revealed plans for a 4-chapter mobile game called Avengers Initiative, with each chapter built around one of the core heroes: Hulk, Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man. The film's title itself became a minor point of confusion in the United Kingdom. In February 2012, Disney announced that the UK title would be altered to avoid confusion with the pre-existing British television series The Avengers and its 1998 film adaptation, though exactly what the new title would be remained unclear for a time. Empire magazine reported the title as Marvel Avengers Assemble, while The Hollywood Reporter reported it simply as Avengers Assemble, and Marvel's own UK website referred to it as Marvel's Avengers Assemble, a discrepancy that Guardian writer David Cox, in an article arguing it was among the worst film titles ever devised, attributed to an error in production notes. Both the British Board of Film Classification and the Irish Film Classification Office ultimately listed the title as Marvel Avengers Assemble. Writer Frank Lovejoy separately noted that regardless of the marketing confusion, the film is formally credited on screen as Marvel's The Avengers, even though posters generally omitted the apostrophe. Feig addressed the added wording in the UK title by describing the amount of deliberation that had gone into the decision. The film's world premiere took place on April 11 to 2012 at the historic El Capitan Theatre in Hollywood. It went on to close the 11th annual Tribeca Film Festival with a special screening on April 28. Ahead of the US Labor Day weekend that September, the film received an unusual expanded theatrical push, growing from 123 theaters back up to from 700 for one additional week. The Avengers stands as the final film released within what is now referred to as Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Home media The Avengers arrived on home video through Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment, released on Blu-ray disc, Blu-ray 3D, DVD, and digital download beginning September 25, 2012 in the United States, with several international markets receiving the release slightly earlier, as soon as August 29. Feig noted that the Blu-ray edition included a new Marvel one-shot short film, Item 47, along with a selection of deleted scenes and abandoned storylines trimmed during editing, among them additional material featuring Cobie Smulders' Maria Hill and alternate versions of scenes depicting Hill and Nick Fury's interactions with the World Security Council. The film was also packaged as part of a 10-disc box set titled Marvel Cinematic Universe, Phase 1 Avengers Assembled, which gathered together all of the Phase 1 MCU films. This set was released on April 6, 2013. Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment later issued the film again on Ultra HD Blu-ray on August 14, 2018. The UK home video release generated some criticism from fans, both for omitting Joss Whedon's audio commentary and for using an altered version of the scene depicting Phil Coulson's death, differing from the theatrical cut. Disney's UK division explained that the toned-down depiction of Coulson's confrontation with Loki resulted from country-specific compliance requirements around depicted violence. and acknowledged that footage intended for a different region had mistakenly been used in assembling the UK home release. In its first week on the market in the United States, the film topped both the overall Nielsen Video Scan First Alert sales chart and the dedicated Blu-ray sales chart, with 72% of total unit sales coming from the Blu-ray format specifically, a record for any release where DVD and Blu-ray launched simultaneously.
More than a decade after the theatrical release, in July 24, a Lakota-language dub of the film became available on Disney+. Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Scarlett Johansson, and Jeremy Renner all returned to re-record their dialogue for the project, which was spearheaded by Ruffalo, who had an existing relationship with the Lakota people and hoped the dub could support ongoing efforts to help revitalize their language. Reception box office: The Avengers and $623.4 million across the United States and Tina in Canada, and an additional $895.5 million internationally, for a worldwide total of roughly $1.519 billion. At that figure made it the third highest grossing film of all time at the point of release, the highest grossing film of 2012, the highest grossing comic book adaptation, the highest grossing superhero film to that date, and the highest grossing release in Walt Disney Studios history up to that point. Its worldwide opening weekend of $392.5 million ranked as the fourth largest ever recorded at the time. The film also became the fifth Disney-distributed release, and the 12th film overall, to surpass $1 billion in worldwide grosses, hitting that milestone in just 19 days, matching a pace previously set by Avatar in 2009 and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 in 2011. Its total gross had already exceeded its roughly $220 million production budget within 12 days of release, and it became the first Marvel production to cross the wall. Domestically, Tis Dolls. The film became the third highest-grossing release of all time, the highest-grossing 2012 release. Atis Grossing Dirt's distributed film, the highest-grossing superhero film, and the highest-grossing comic book-based film. It opened on Friday, May 4, 2012, across roughly 11,800 screens in 4,349 theaters, earning $80.8 million on opening day, the second largest single day and opening day total recorded up to that point. That Friday figure included $18.7 million from midnight screenings, itself a record for a superhero release. Stripped of the midnight total, the remaining opening day gross of $62.1 million still stood as the largest true opening day haul at the time. The film went on to set records for both Saturday and Sunday grosses, $9.6 million and $57.1 million respectively. Its full opening weekend brought in $207,004,708, setting a new opening weekend record overall, including a record IMAX opening weekend of $15.3 million and a record $108 million generated specifically from 3D screenings. Audience data collected over that opening weekend showed a roughly even split between moviegoers under and over the age of 25, a 60% male audience, 55% attending as couples, 24% as families, and 21% identifying as teenagers. The film's momentum continued into its second weekend, earning $103.1 million, a new record for the largest second weekend gross ever recorded. Additional records included the highest per theater average for a wide release, at $47,698 per theater. The fastest film to reach the $100 million mark in each subsequent $50 million increment up through $550 million, and the largest cumulative box office total on every individual day of release through its 43rd day, excluding its first day. The film held the #1 box office position for 3 consecutive weekends. By the end of May 2012, its cumulative total of $532.5 million accounted for a record 52% of the entire domestic box office for that month. Internationally, the film likewise became the third highest grossing release of all time, the highest grossing Disney distributed film, the highest grossing release of 2012, and the highest grossing superhero film globally. It opened on Wednesday, April 25, 2012, in 10 countries, earning $17.1 million, then expanded to 29 additional countries over April 26 and 27, adding $73.1 million across those 3 days. By Sunday, April 29, its cumulative international opening weekend total across 39 countries reached $185.1 million, and the film went on to hold the top spot at international box offices for 4 consecutive weekends. It set opening day records in New Zealand, Malaysia, and Iceland, along with single-day records in the Philippines, and achieved both single-day and opening day records in Singapore and Thailand. It also the second highest opening day totals ever recorded in Australia at $6.2 million, Mexico, the Philippines, and Vietnam, and it set outright opening weekend records in a long list of territories including Mexico, Brazil, Ecuador, Bolivia, Taiwan, the Philippines, Hong Kong, the United Arab Emirates, Argentina, Peru, and Central America, along with the second largest 5-day opening ever in Australia, at $20.2 million in the United Kingdom specifically. The film earned $2.5 million, about $4.1 million, on its opening day and £15.8 million, about $25.7 million, across its opening weekend, setting new superhero film there and becoming the market's highest-grossing superhero release. In Latin America, it became the highest-grossing film of all time in the region, with $207 million, and the first film ever to pass a $2 million IR. It also became the highest-grossing film released in the Philippines, Singapore, and Indonesia. As of a February 2021 accounting, its leading individual international markets were China $83 million, the United Kingdom $80.5 million, Brazil $63.9 million, Mexico $61.7 million, and Australia $54.5 million. Critical response. Critical reaction to the Avengers skewed strongly on releases. The review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes recorded an approval rating of 91% with an average score of 8.1 out of 10, based on 368 reviews, and summarized the critic consensus by praising the way its script grounded its heroes' humanity even amid a wealth of large-scale action sequences, describing the film as living up to its enormous hype, while raising the bar for Marvel's cinematic output. Metacritic, which calculates a weighted average, gave the film a score of 69 out of 100 based on 43 reviews, corresponding to a generally favorable designation. Audiences surveyed by CinemaScore awarded the film a rare A/O grade, the top rating on the service's I/F scale. Individual critical reactions varied in emphasis even where they converged on a broadly positive verdict. Todd McCarthy of The Hollywood Reporter offered a favorable assessment, acknowledging that the Save the World plot was thoroughly familiar and that the great decades it verkesites the peen issue. ADF of Ruffalo, Scarlett Johansson, but arguing that Whedon and his collaborators had nonetheless managed to blend all the disparate personalities and elements into something that still felt fresh and satisfying despite its familiarity. Rolling Stones. Freerktud described the Scribes' film as essentially the ideal version of a Marvel team-up blockbuster he had long imagined, characterizing it as an action spectacle with genuine wit, heart, and intelligence layered beneath its scale. Variety's Justin Chang likewise responded warmly, calling Whedon's film a buoyant and witty piece of sophisticated escapism whose convent tone and abundant humor helped offset the somewhat formulaic and unwieldy nature inherent to a large ensemble origin story. Scarlett Johansson, Kenneth Turan of The Los Angeles praised the film's frenetic pacing, while Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times offered a more measured take, suggesting the film gave its built-in precisely what they wanted. A wine juent. Whether that was truly what they deserved remained an open question. A. Scott of The New York Times was more critical, arguing that although the film wasn't worth condemning outright, its shortcomings were real and somewhat dispiriting, describing amusing moments as ultimately unable to offset what he saw as a grinding emptiness and cynicism he considered characteristic of the superhero genre as a whole rather than unique to this particular film. Performances drew significant attention in the critical conversation, with Mark Ruffalo to take on Bruce Banner and the Hulk emerging as a particular point of praise. Ade Junohansen. New York Daily News critic Joe Neumeyer considered Ruffalo's performance the standout of the entire cast, citing his interpretation of Banner as a quietly composed presence with real tension simmering beneath the surface. The New Yorker's Anthony Lane similarly singled out Ruffalo, alongside Downey, as one of the film's chief pleasures. The Village Voice's Karina Longworth felt Ruffalo brought new life to a familiar character, portraying Banner as a shy, self-effacing intellectual who, in contrast to his more physically imposing teammates, understood the value of staying out of the spotlight. Travers described Ruffalo's performance as carrying a scruffy warmth and humor, and Tehran felt Ruffalo's portrayal surpassed those of his predecessors in the role, Edward Norton and Eric Bana. In Entertainment Weekly's Owen Gleiberman argued that Ruffalo as a Banner defined by constant internal tension was one of the filmmaker's smartest decisions, suggesting the choice the Selni's El Longzenti finally resolved a long-standing tonal problem with the Hulk by making the character and more but similar, more controlled doses. Downey's performance drew a more mixed comparative assessment from some critics. The Wall Street Journal's Joe Morgenstern, while complimentary of Downey's work overall, suggested his performance in the original Iron Man remained more impressive than his work here, crediting the earlier film's more focused character work and Downey's naturally sharp, hands-on, self-deprecating screen presence as elements that had less room to shine within a larger ensemble format. Neumeyer, meanwhile, Captain America's internal struggle to adjust to his circumstances, the film's script and character writing were also frequent subjects of praise. Associated Press critic Christy Lemay felt the dialogue was sharp and well-crafted as the film's visual effects, arguing that despite the characters' outlandish costumes, Stufson came across as genuinely well-developed underneath the spectacle. A.O. Scott drew a comparison between certain stretches of the film and the classic Western Rio Bravo, suggesting a similar loose, character-driven charm. Longworth offered a more qualified assessment, CGO. Whedon's script did make gestures toward exploring the characters' individual backstories, it never developed those threads in a truly substantive way. The film's achievements were also recognized through a range of force nilcha polacas. At the 85th Academy Awards, The Avengers received a nomination for Best Visual Effects. It also picked up 2 Annie Award nominations, winning one, along with a British Academy Film Award nomination and 3 nominations at the Critics' Choice Movie Awards. In 2017, Empire magazine included the film in its ranking the 100 greatest movies of all time. Taken together, the critical conversation around The Avengers tended to center on a few recurring themes. Admiration for how Johansson dune balanced such a large ensemble without letting any single character overwhelm the appreciation for the film's self-aware sense of humor amid large-scale destruction, and a broad consensus that the visual effects and action choreography, particularly the climactic, single-take style tracking shot through the final New York battle, represented a high point for the genre at the time. Even critics, who found fault with the film's familiar blockbuster formula, such as Scott, tended to concede that its craftsmanship and character chemistry set it apart from lesser imitators. To satisfy longtime comic readers and newcomers unfamiliar with the source material was frequently cited as central to its crossover success, a balance that later Marvel Studios productions would continue to strive for as the franchise expanded. The film's success led directly to a continuing franchise. Avengers Age of Ultron, again written and directed by Whedon, followed on May 1, 2015, bringing back, first 2015, Klech, Desiva, Iutiflasida Dishazifa as Wetch, Eraz Tailitz as Quicksilver, Skull Bettany in a new role as Vision, and James Spader as the villainous Ultron. The next 2 chapters, Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, were directed by Anthony and Joe Russo from a script by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, arriving on April 27, 2018, and April 26, 2019, respectively, with ensemble casts drawing together characters from across the broader Marvel Cinematic Universe. The original film's story was later revisited from an alternate angle in What If? The World Lost Its Mightiest Heroes? An episode of the animated Marvel Cinematic Universe series What If? that reimagines events from the 2012 film. I feel in Obolo, Scarlett Johansson in order for a subplot to really take off and break records like the Avengers did, it has to have certain elements that make fans want to go to the theater more than just once. At this point, there is no reason to recap a film that most have already seen at least several times. So with the sequel upon us, let us look back as to why the film was so great. I feel in order for a summer blockbuster to really take off and break records like the Avengers did, have certain elements that make fans want to go to the theater more than just once. So, was Marvel's secret? The Marvel Cinematic Universe formula before the first Iron Man film, comic book movies stayed in their respective places. They didn't venture off with other franchises. With Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four and some others in the hands of other studios, Marvel had little to play with. The decision to form their own studio was bold and brave. They didn't have that big dude Johansson, have that big draw superhero that the common public was very familiar with. The second bold decision was to not just pick a hero and make a movie, but to make a universe in the film industry that models comics. They had a vision to create a cinematic world where Iron Man interacts with Captain America and Thor. When the first Iron Man film came on, and they put in the after-credit scene with Nick Fury and the Avengers Initiative, fans went crazy with anticipation. And the Marvel Each film after that just led to the next film, with teasers that left you wanting more and craving to see all these heroes on screen together. The Marvel films were good, but they weren't yet box office behemoths. Still, they managed to create a giant franchise that branches off to individual franchises who all can stand alone by themselves, yet together create a giant world that we love. A compelling villain. A few years ago, Tom Hiddleston arrived at Comic-Con in San Diego fully clothed in his Loki outfit. The amount of cheers and ovation for him and his character were amazing. Somehow, Marvel and Hiddleston have managed to create a villain that many can say has become a modern Darth Vader. It is a villain that we know is bad, yet we root for because he's so compelling. And although Loki is bad, there is a sense of compassion for him and his history. In Thor we saw how mischievous he is, fully resembling the god of mischief. Yet, he is a perfect representation of how the devil works. In a way it makes him the perfect because not this evil ugly monster but instead he is an indocile, bad eye. Our nature is drawn to it because we don't see it so much of a threat until it is too late. The reality is that a villain drew us back into Avengers was perfectly done. And to top it off, we know he wasn't the main villain in the Marvel Universe, connecting this point to the one above, a strong reason to bring all to. Loki is a great villain, but not one that requires the Avengers formed. That's why Marvel showed its future goal to bring us to an outer world and expand their universe. With the introduction of the Cosmic Cube, Tesseract, in Captain America, the first Avenger and the beautifully done Asgard in Thor, the Marvel Universe is set to expand. Beyond that, so what does all this mean? When we look at this in the lens of faith, there is much to take out. But, in all of Marvel's tangled webs, there is one great evil, hidden and scheming. And although Loki operates like the devil, he is merely an agent of the devil. There is a Hebrew greater and more powerful enemy that stays hidden, waiting like a roaring lion to attack. A new world is presented here where someone like Tony Stark finds everything he thought flipped upside down. I imagine the wormhole opening to show a world where something like spiritual warfare actually does exist. It's like a wave of Chitauri. Demon out to destroy and conquer mankind, while standing between them and the world? Are the angels. When we look at it through lens, we can definitely see the comparison and use it as an opportunity to brush up on our faith. We need to remember that the enemy is like a roaring lion roaming and looking for whom to devour, and that we ought to guard ourselves with the speed ourselves with the full armor of God. With the release of Avengers Age of Ultron, these same elements will be seen played out differently. Once again, Marvel will have a record-breaking summer, and I can indeed complain about that. As far as I am concerned, anything coming out of Marvel Studios is a great catch. As I continue down the Hess road to Infinity War, I come to the pinnacle of Dus Marxen F.X. Phase 1, the culmination of 5 films and the foundational world building that led to the Avengers. In 2012, we had never seen anything like it. Sure, there were those old Universal monster movies that paired up Frankenstein, Dracula, and company, but never did we see properties, tied together into a cohesive narrative. I remember much talk then of if something like this could even work from a storytelling perspective, let alone into a crowd-pleasing blockbuster. To be honest, when the first trailer dropped for the Avengers, I didn't know if it would all come together. Boy, did this film prove itself to me and the world. Tasked with the job of making the film was Joss Whedon as director. Love him or hate him, has made a career off of writing and envisioning figures by muchos, making him no-brainer at speed up. Disney.